I'd love to introduce Andy Liu. He is, as I put out an email to everyone, he's great because he's both an operator and an investor. And that's really unique. A lot of guys are investors and have maybe done it once, but Andy's done it a number of times, continues to does it, and he's only invested in, I don't know, what, 44 companies? So he's done a lot of angel investing, so he really gets it, knows what he's looking for, has a lot of great insights, and absolutely loves startups. So, and the Seahawks. So
next year.
So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Andy Liu to Startup Grind. Thanks. So those of you who have not been here, it's really just an interview. So I'm just going to ask questions and hold your questions till about 8 o'clock, and I'll open up for some questions from you guys. But let me get through some of my, I got a list, which actually some of these of you have sent me, some of the people in this room have sent me questions. So we'll just ask questions, and when you have a question, hold it till at least after 8, and I'll get as many as we can in, and so we'll start from there. So Andy, I'll just start from the top here. What do you do for fun?
What I do for fun? I love to travel, I love to play poker, and occasionally I will play some ping pong with someone who doesn't mind losing, so it's good. Yeah.
So are you good at poker?
I can hold my own, but it's not bad. Yeah.
Bob
Enjoy
Crimmins?
playing.
Bob Crimmins?
Bob Crimmins, yeah. Every once in a while I'll play at the World Series.
Sure.
So it's fun.
So now tell me just a little briefly, like you grew up in Seattle, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So you went to Seattle Pacific.
Yep.
Went to Wharton, which is interesting. So tell us, what do you think your family upbringing, did it give you any advantages, your family? Did it give you disadvantages? What was your family, what would that help for Andy?
Yeah, it started, my dad was actually an entrepreneur, and it was an up and down story. So he actually had a successful business and actually ended up not doing so well. So very quickly at the age of 15, I started working full time and started actually helping to pay a mortgage, and learned a lot about what life was about. So I worked at the large companies at first, and then started moving down into the startup range. And at the startup range, I think that's when I really got real passionate about getting started. A little naively, because I thought, hey, I've learned a lot from all these companies, and sure enough, I can start a company, but it was a lot harder than that. But I think that was probably the impetus.
So besides selling goods to your parents, to your friends' parents, what was your first business? What was your first business?
You saw that interview apparently. So yeah,
I do a little research.
That's right. The first entrepreneurial experience probably was, the most serious one was Net Conversions back in '99. I started this company. I actually sat in the back in a business school. This professor was giving a talk on basically his research on how he was able to take grocery scanner data and be able to predict whether or not you were going to buy, or what you were going to buy during that trip to the grocery store. And then he applied it to this company. Now a lot of you may not remember, but it's called CD Now. And so he took this data regarding how people are moving through the store on cdnow.com, and he was able to predict with reasonable accuracy whether or not someone's going to purchase on that site. And I thought that was a pretty interesting academic research, and asked him after class whether or not he'd be open to commercializing that research. And he said he hadn't actually thought about it, and so we created this company called Net Conversions, which was a way to commercialize that research. So the real basic thesis of that company real early was, if we can predict whether or not you're going to buy on a site, can we actually manipulate and actually increase the chances that you're going to buy based on how you're moving through a website? So long story short, we built this black box algorithm. You install it onto an e-commerce site, and based on how you're moving through the site, we would actually give you offers to increase the chances of sale. And long story short, we sold 0 of that product, and had to pivot it into a website usability and optimization company that turned out to be pretty successful, and eventually sold that company.
So you went to college, went to Seattle Pacific.
Yeah.
What's your undergrad in?
Electrical engineering.
Yeah. So, why did you, why that?
At that point in time, I thought I was pretty good at it, so I've kind of followed it through. Enjoyed computers, and that's where I was working, and so forth. And very quickly, I actually realized after starting a company that that was not a forte of mine, coding, and so I hired much smarter folks to actually do the engineering.
And so you got your MBA,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm assuming that's where you met your partner.
Yeah, my original partner. Yeah. Yep.
So you went through a couple companies with him.
Yep.
Tell us kind of about that. Tell us about David.
Yeah. So kind of serendipity. I met David, my co-founder in Net Conversions at Wharton, actually at Welcome Weekend. So even before school started, we hung out, and then when school started, we went ahead and started the company. This is kind of my thought process back then. I started this company. I kind of had an engineering background. And I was like, hey, why don't I get somebody who's got a management consulting background and add in a investment banker, and voila, you've got a magic formula for success. Sure enough, the investment banker dropped out 6 months later, so we had to deal with that issue. And then David turned out to be a great partner for about 12 years. So, and we're still cranking away.
Yeah. And are the roles still the same?
No. So he has actually moved on. So he's actually on my board still at Buddy TV, and he's gone on and started another company called Tiny HR, which is a human resources product, of which Buddy TV is a client. So
sure,
yeah.
Sure. But what I meant, like when you originally got together as partners,
Yep.
his role was what?
It's kind of evolved, but primarily his strengths are a lot around operations, and so a lot of detail-oriented HR, building processes, and he at Buddy TV managed the editorial team, and I split and really focused on product, focused on strategy, financing, thinking about biz dev and so forth. So that's kind of where we broke down.
So that was the split between the two.
Yeah.
Okay. Now. You got your MBA.
Mm-hmm.
Would you recommend doing that again? Would you? No, let me wait.
Right.
So I got my MBA as well.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm not nothing wrong with that. But so, would you recommend getting your MBA, or would you recommend going to start a new company?
I think it's a nuanced question. So
today.
Yeah, today. I think if your goal is to start a company, I would lean towards starting the company unless you can get into a top 3 school. If you can get in a top 3 school and you go in with the idea, hey, I'm going to network and meet with entrepreneurs and use it as a way to kind of get entrees into venture firms and financing and so forth, I think it's a good way to also vet out an idea. Then I think that might be worthwhile. Otherwise, I think, generally speaking, I think MBAs are kind of a dime a dozen, and doesn't necessarily make you successful.
Yes.
So.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Although I paid $50.
That's right. A lot of that.
So do you have mentors?
Yes.
And do you mentor?
Both. I would say one of the key things that I'm involved in is kind of a peer networking group, and so there's been a lot of ups and downs in entrepreneurship, and so I would say at the times that are really, really stressful, to have a peer group, and so there's a peer group of about 8 or 9 entrepreneurs I kind of meet with. I don't think I would have made great decisions because it's oftentimes an emotional roller coaster and you can't see things clearly. And if you can't get away from it and have some perspective, I think many entrepreneurs actually give up too soon. And so, so the peer group, number one, is really, really important. The second piece, which is mentoring and so forth, I get a lot of energy from that. So that's why I try to meet with one entrepreneur a week. If I did more than that, I think I would go crazy. But one a week, and then generally speaking, I try to not only provide some advice, but also evaluate it on an investment idea, thesis as well.
Sure, yeah, because you're meeting with them both to help, but also kind of say, hey, this is something I want to write a check for.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Who did you raise your first $100,000 from?
I actually remember.
It wasn't a relative.
That's right. That's right. It was an interesting group. It was actually during the winter break on my first year at business school. I went to Seattle and met with this investment group called the Cherubs. And these guys were Microsoft multimillionaires that wanted to do angel investing. And so I went in. It was totally stressful and so forth. They were all at a table. There's probably like 7 of them, and it was like question after question after question after question. And I had already done this for a while because you pitch a lot and you get turned down a lot. So, but even then, it's still kind of nerve-wracking. And by the time I got back, they made an offer to put in $100,000. So yeah, that was the first one.
That's great. And that was for net conversions.
That was for net conversions.
Yeah. Tell us why you like bacon salt.
Oh, yeah. Bacon salt's one of my angel investment switches, and I don't do food deals. So if you have a food startup, don't pitch me on a food startup. The reason I like them is that both of them were actually tech guys out of a defunct company called Jobster, if you remember that company, and these guys they're not cut from the food industry, which is nice because they have a fresh perspective on it. But what I really liked about them was they're very, very, let's say, thoughtful around guerrilla marketing. And so they went out and they got on Oprah Winfrey. They also did this crazy launch party down here in DeSoto. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but for the launch of Baconaise, and everything they do is really revolved around bacon, and they launched Baconaise, which is mayonnaise that tastes like bacon. And they did this launch party, got it all sponsored. Radio stations were out, news were out, and so forth. They set up a huge pen of mayonnaise and set up bacon versus mayonnaise and so forth. And it was a fight after fight after fight of wrestling in mayonnaise. And then right after that was done, they got the world champion bacon eater. I didn't even know these people existed. And they brought in a person to actually qualify whether or not this person is going to set a new world record in eating bacon in less than 12 minutes. And it was amazing to watch because this dude was world class in terms of he looked like an athlete. And he had 12 pounds of bacon in front of him, and he was pounding it. And he missed the world record by just like 6 ounces. It was amazing. But again, it drew a lot of traffic, and they're doing pretty well.
They're doing pretty well. Totally. So tell us, what is one of the most challenging periods in your career? Like I'm not talking like years. I'm talking like week or days. Like. Narrow it down.
Yeah, no, I remember these very distinctly because I feel like most entrepreneurs you talk to have had near-death experiences, and I feel like I've had many of them. But one kind of sticks out in my mind is when we started Net Conversions, I had raised nearly $1.5 million, and we built this product, and I had did all the stuff like got customers to actually sign these letter of intents, like if I build it, would you sign and buy the product and what have you? Then sign it. It's not legally binding and so forth. And so obviously we went out and built it and worked like a champ for a variety of reasons, and one of which made a lot of sense afterwards is that these e-tailers really didn't like black boxes on their site where they didn't understand how you're discriminating on price or shipping and so forth. So none of them would buy it. And so all of a sudden we went from 1.5 million, and I will tell you, we had $200 in the bank, and couldn't make payroll. And I had one of my institutional investors, I can read his letters to his investors. He basically wrote our investment down to zero and said expects that we would close. Had investors also call and saying, Andy, you can throw in the towel. You've got great opportunities with your degree and so forth. You don't need to push any further. And I think part of it was persistence, but I think also some insanity too. Like, hey, we can still pull this out. We still have $200 in the bank. So what I did was it turned out that again, the emotional side was a lot of the phone calls that were coming in were all creditors asking for money, of which we didn't have any, and so the only thing that we could control was I actually shut down the inbound line so no calls could come in, and so I didn't have to listen to those guys because I figured if I don't listen to those guys, I have time to actually focus on the business. And then I went to Barnes & Noble and picked up every cold calling book that I could find and started dialing for dollars and basically sold vaporware. Like, hey, you know, here's what we're building and here's what we've got. And we actually dumbed down the product. And I remember our first client we signed was Photo Alley for 10 grand, and that was like a huge thing. As soon as that check came in, I cashed it and told people, hey, you might want to cash your check right now because I don't know if it's going to last very long. And then we'd sign American Express and so forth. But a lot of it was really just saying, hey, no more focus on raising money because it wasn't coming. No more answer the phones. It's all outbound phone calls. But it was dicey. Yeah, very dicey.
And what do you, did it ever happen again? Has it ever happened again? Like a similar near-death experience?
Definitely several near-death experiences on my portfolio companies, but I would say more pivots. Like if anything, I'm more sensitive to being able to see things a little bit ahead of time and saying, hey, you know, this isn't working, so either I've got to slash some costs now to give myself a little bit more runway, and being very realistic whether or not I can raise money or what have you to be able to survive. But I'm much more sensitive to making sure that I don't run out of runway. Yeah.
And so you're a big communicator, at least you like to be communicated well in advance of bad things as well as good things, right? And as anyone that's ever raised money and had investors, you have your natural inclination is don't tell them until good news comes. So kind of say some things because you're from the investor standpoint and you're from the operator standpoint. So tell the audience a bit about how important or how you can communicate even the bad.
You know. So one of the things that I still find interesting is when I invest in a first-time entrepreneur, you know, that they're always in this sales mode. So they're in the sales mode, and then they finally get me to write a check and my buddies to write a check. And the thing that drives me nuts at that point is like, hey, you know what? We're all on the same team now. And if I meet with them and so forth, and all I hear is great stuff, I'm like, dude, you know, we're all on the same team. You can give me the bad news because at least we have a chance to discuss what are the things that we can do to help. And also, we're not surprised when you come back to us and say, hey, I need some more cash. It actually happened to me last year is I never heard from the startup until they couldn't make payroll. And then I get an email saying, we can't make payroll. We need everybody to put in 50 grand. And I'm like, no, I'm not putting in 50 grand. Like, this is super surprising to me. And so I would say two things. One is with the investor newsletter, it's really, really simple. I would give, what are the top 3 things that happened in the last 30 days? What's the worst 3 things that happened in the last 30 days? And where can I use help? And if you start building that rapport and that sort of rhythm, then at least the investors can't complain and say, hey, I didn't even know this was on the horizon. And remember, they're on your team, so the more that you're trying to sell them, the more I get kind of annoyed because honestly, I don't mind hearing bad news because I know how hard it is.
So if you could pick one thing that would be the thing that was the hardest thing for you to learn when you were learning how to run a company, what would that one thing be? Like, what was the biggest hurdle for you to run a company?
I think the most important thing is, and this comes from my first company. My first company, I thought I could just work myself to death and this thing will work. And so I would say my average hours per week was in the neighborhood of 100 hours a week. And I got a lot of gray hair, a lot of stress, probably wasn't all that healthy. And this time around, I think I'm much wiser about how I spend my time. And so if I had to kind of distill kind of a process that I use, and again, it works for people in different ways. It's don't let the business control you. You gotta control the business. And so Here's what I mean. Like, I always have a to-do list that's about 500 items long. So I actually use Notepad. So I just make sure anytime I think of something I need to do, just put it on Notepad so I know that I won't forget about it. So it's on there. And then when I step into work, I want to know what are the top 3 things I'm going to accomplish that day. No matter what happens, I'm going to stay at work, what is going to happen. Those are the top 3 things I'm going to do today. The biggest mistake that I have done in the past is letting the business control me. So I'll check email, and then all of a sudden I get stuck, and then all of a sudden, somebody asks me a question and there's a phone ringing and all that sort of stuff. And I do all that stuff, and I look back at my day and I go, I absolutely accomplished nothing. And I've moved the business nowhere. And so honestly, this is probably not the best way to kind of manage relationships, but that's also how I manage email and voicemail too. Is like, you know what, I just can't get back to this. And if they really need to get a hold of me, they're going to email me again, and it'll come up to the top of the list. So I don't necessarily answer every email. I don't necessarily answer every voicemail and so forth, because what I'm trying to do is move the business forward, and what are my top 3 things I need to accomplish that day, get that done, and control the business. And if I don't do that, then the business will always control me, and it's going to go absolutely nowhere.
Yeah. Fast. Goes nowhere fast.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Are you a fan of VC money, angel money, or bootstrapping, or does it depend?
I would say it's nuanced, but I'm actually a big fan of taking money for a couple of reasons. One, it's what a great system where if you take angel money or venture money and so forth, where you could absolutely screw it up and you're not going to lose your house or your car or what have you. So, I mean, somebody is literally writing, money that's hard earned to you and trusting it to you to make a difference. And what a great system if you can turn that around for them. But I will say a couple of things about that. The reasons why I like it on the pro side is I think it can also add a ton of accountability too. I think a lot of entrepreneurs want a lot of control in their company, and sometimes that's unhealthy. In fact, I would also argue that sometimes it's better to even have board members that have the capability of firing you as well. Because I think that having smart folks around that are trying to build a great asset is not only good for you, but also good for your long-term outlook too. So for example, if they say, we want you out, then you're working on something else and you have a piece of the action in that company. Hopefully they're hiring somebody that's significantly better than you. And so I think that adds a lot of accountability, some more perspective and so forth. I would say the downside is if you attach yourself to really tough investors, and they are out there, and I would say challenging, not only challenging, but sometimes borderline gray, unethical folks, it's almost impossible to get rid of them. And I learned a hard lesson my first time around, because when we sold the company, it turned out that I had to pay in legal fees way more than that person actually wrote in their initial check, and I lost a lot of sleep around it. So every dollar that you do take in, be very careful. Make sure you've done your diligence, because sometimes it can turn out to bite you.
Yeah, there is such thing as bad money.
That's right, absolutely.
So let's talk about Buddy TV.
Mm-hmm.
So tell the audience in the shortest way possible, what's Buddy TV?
We're a next-gen TV guide. Goal is to actually get you to watch more TV than you already are. But it's a next-gen TV guide. We index the cable, satellite, over the air, over the top, all into one guide and help you find great content to watch. And so we're doing that on phones and tablets, and then we also have a popular website as well.
Yeah. Okay, so what? Why did you start? Let me ask it different. What problem were you trying to solve when you started Buddy TV?
A different one than what we're doing right now. So
sure. That's always
yeah, that's right. Actually, after I sold the last company, I wanted to travel the world, spend a year traveling the world. Spent 30 days, ended up in the mountains of Peru, and I had a beer at Cusco, and got really excited about this idea around social TV, because, and this is in 2005, the people are watching TV differently. Kids were doing homework, they're talking on the phone, chatting, and so forth. They weren't only watching TV, which is how most people were watching TV 50 years ago. And so the whole thesis that we're solving was, hey, if people are doing other things, what if we create a social TV experience where the stars are actually broadcasting live commentary along with the show as the show was going on? And so that was the basic thesis. And then sure enough, a year into it, we built this great product. It actually was a great product, and we got stars of the show to actually broadcast live commentary. The best we could do was aggregate about 1,000 users onto the platform, and that just was not enough to build a business. But the aha moment for us was when we took all that data, or all that conversation with that small group, and we posted that online. We had 50,000 people read that content. And so then that was like the light bulb for us was, there's a lot of demand for this content, and so let's build content around all the TV shows on TV, hire writers, and so forth. And that's how we kind of got going on BuddyTV.com.
Yeah. And where do you see it 2 years from now? Where do you see Buddy TV? What do you think? What's your vision with that?
Yeah, so 2 years ago we did a survey, and this is something I would highly encourage everybody to do. Is always be getting market feedback from the market. I think there are a few folks like Steve Jobs who can actually predict the future. I'm not one of those guys, so I really do like market feedback, Mechanical Turk, surveys, Feedback Army, a bunch of these tools. And we found that the majority of our users had smartphones and tablets as they were watching TV. And so we wanted to find out from them, what's a key problem that you want solved when you're in the living room. And we learned 3 things. One is there's 1.2 million pieces of content that you can watch when you're sitting down to watch TV at 8 p.m. in the evening. It takes you about 8 to 10 minutes to find something to watch. So you'll turn on the TV, you'll go through your cable guide, and then you go, I don't see anything there. And then I'm gonna go to my DVR, I don't see anything there. I'll go to On Demand, I don't see anything there. Then I'll go to Netflix, Amazon, Hulu. Screw it, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna watch Karate Kid 3 for the 11th time in SD with commercials, even though I have it in DVD format downstairs. So you end up watching 70% of the time suboptimal content. And so we set out to basically solve that problem. Find great content to watch, less than 20 seconds, and you're watching something that's actually valuable to you. We think that in 2 years, the main mode of discovery will be your phone or your tablet and so forth. And it's an extremely valuable position when you're actually helping people make decisions on what to consume. And so that's where we want to be.
Yes, you want to be in front of the user.
That's right.
On their lap.
Yep.
Yeah, totally. So, would you consider yourself more technically oriented or more business oriented when you're in your business, in your operating your business?
I would say I'm technical enough to be dangerous, and so I can at least sit in on engineering meetings and not be way in over my head. But I do have a phenomenal CTO, so I'm able to have the latitude to focus more on the business side, and a great CTO that's phenomenal at managing engineers.
Yes, well, he's been through a few things.
Yeah, yes.
So when you're looking at a business to invest in, what are you looking at? Are you looking more at the technical, or are you looking more at the business? So I can hear you can lean on Bill at your CEO a lot because he's done it.
Yeah.
So
I think it's interesting when I looked at the companies that did well out of my portfolio, and a lot of it is also like how much of it is attributed to luck and how much of it is attributed to maybe some skill in selecting companies, and I'm still not sure in that spectrum. So I have these talks with folks, like a lot of the ones that I thought were left for dead. I mean, they ended up being great winners too. So, but I would say the one thing that was very clear across all of them was the idea didn't matter as much as the leader behind it. And so when I went with my gut with a leader that I thought will walk through walls, like number one, they're not working a part-time job or still at their current company. They've actually written checks. They are full in. They are like, you know what, I'm all in on building this product. When I have a sense that they've gone through a couple of hard times, or I have a sense that they're really gonna push through, I think that's been more of an indicator of success in my portfolio than having an A+ idea. The interesting ones are, there's a couple of them that I would say were A+ team, C- ideas, and they turned out to be great successes. And so I would say that that's probably where I lean on even more than, say, business plan or technology.
Yeah. The guy or guys.
Or team. Yeah.
So, how much time do you spend in the office now today? You don't spend 100 hours, so.
Yeah, about 50 hours in the office.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are you doing in the office?
Again, it kind of depends on where I'm at. Right now, I bucket things into 2 areas that I'm very focused on 2013. One is revenue, and then one is customer acquisition. And so I want to make sure I'm moving the ball in both directions. A lot of times I'd rather just focus on one, but I'm kind of in this area where I want to focus on both. And then literally go through and say, what am I doing to move the ball on both? And so that's where I'm focused on. So customer acquisition, a lot of it is biz dev. And so where am I going to meet folks? How many emails am I sending out? What many phone calls am I doing? You know, how many meetings am I setting up? All that sort of stuff on biz dev, any current contracts, and then on the revenue side is the same thing. Yeah.
So let's take a step back from the previous. So you mentioned Bill Baxter.
Yeah.
He's your CTO. He's B-Square. He's done a lot of stuff. So how did you build that team? I mean, he's a guy that you like to have your team. Obviously, your former partner that you've worked with for years.
Yeah.
How do you do that when you're starting a company? Especially from somewhat from scratch.
Yeah. Well.
What do you focus on, I guess, is a better question. What do you focus on to get those guys?
Yeah. Well, I would say the number one skill set for a startup entrepreneur would have to be sales. And that's something you will never learn in business school and you never learn in an academic setting. It's literally like, what are the ABCs of doing great sales? And I think I've learned over time some good processes around that, but I would say that has got to be number one priority in terms of recruiting a team, is how am I going to sell myself in such a way that people get excited about the idea, I understand what their motivations in terms of how I can get them to where they want to be, are they a great fit for the team and so forth. Bill's a great example. He's our CTO. He was the founder and CEO of B-Square and has done tremendous stuff, but I've had a relationship with him for 5 years prior where I was constantly like pitching him ideas and all this, like we got to work together and so forth. And when the time came, I mean, it really worked out. So sometimes these sales processes are 5 years, 10 years, but I think, what's one of these books that I really like? It's the guy from Never Eat Alone and so forth. He talks about building a business plan that's around relationships and less so around building a business plan. I don't know if I would go that far, but I think it's a great example of what you can do in life to set yourself up for success. If you were to look at all the deals that are being done, it's rarely done because of a sales process. Most of the time it's because of relationships built over time, especially the strategic ones. And so very quickly, broadly, what he does is he says, here are the guys and gals that could move my business the most this year. And you write those people down, whoever they are. And then you stack rank them based on, hey, what's my relationship with them? -1 meaning it's terrible, 0 meaning I have none, and 1 being I do have a relationship with them. And then what kind of impact can they make on my business? And you literally write out a plan, where do you want to take them? And also how are you going to do that? And so those are a lot of things I think need to be built to kind of build your network and so forth. A couple of things in terms of like selling I think is really important. One is I think it's really underrated, but I hate selling myself to somebody when I'm hanging out with them, because it just, I don't know, for me it kind of feels douchey, like, hey, I'm this and that and so forth. But I think one of the most effective ways of doing that is prepping a meeting beforehand and most people are too lazy to do it. So what I mean by prepping in the meeting beforehand is find out who that person hangs out with, and it's so easy to find out who this person hangs out with based on their social networks and so forth. And you call those folks somehow and tell them, hey, I would love it if you could squeeze in a good word for me. Here's 3 things I want you to tell them about me. And so when you go into that meeting, they're excited to hear about you. They're like, dude, this person is smart, he's capable, he's successful, all that sort of stuff. I mean, you've already been pre-sold, and so all of a sudden it just gets that much easier. Most people don't do that. And then the second thing that most people don't do is when you're building rapport with a guy, a lot of times you can find out they're a Steelers fan or they're, you know, what have you. I will go out of my way to make sure that I remember something small and then send them a book from Amazon. You know, like, so what's something that's memorable that nobody else does, and it'll leave a lasting impression. And so I do remember the people who are unique. The bar is always higher because it feels like everybody's selling you. There's commercials everywhere and so forth. So how are you kind of making yourself distinct? And that's how, you know, I think you get great people that way. I think you get great investors that way. And obviously I think you can sell to big companies that way too.
Do you spend a lot of time researching or reading other blogs? Is that you? Is that your kind of guy?
I enjoy reading quite a bit. I think it's, I like to hear what's going on in the industry. I want to hear who's doing deals and so forth.
What's a couple, 2 or 3 you like?
In general,
besides
technology. Yeah, right. I mean, I definitely watch TechCrunch and GeekWire, but I do like all things D, Business Insider, and then obviously in TV, a ton of blogs inside of TV as well.
Sure.
So yeah, Google Alerts is useful too.
Yeah. I use Google Alerts a lot. So you've invested in Cheeseburger, Chirpify, Pressplane, Optify, Energy Savvy, and 39 others. If there's any one thing you seek out to invest in, what is it? If you just pick one thing, what would it be?
For the future?
Yeah.
I want to invest in things that I feel like I can add a little bit of value. So really, that's around consumer. So I think the other areas, if you actually get to me through like Jeff or Edward Yim or some of the guys I invest with, and they say, Andy, this is a great deal, and I know nothing about it, sometimes occasionally I'll take a flyer. I haven't done all that well on those investments yet, so it remains to be seen if I'm kind of a lemming on that side. But that's the only way I would invest on stuff that I don't know. But otherwise, I'd like to stay on consumer, and that's where I occasionally will lead a deal too.
Yeah, just because you know the space.
Right.
What stage do you like to invest in?
I like to be first in. Yeah.
It's like pre-revenue even.
Yeah, pre-revenue or a little bit of revenue. I think the bar is higher right now. So I would say now it's team plus a product, some users if you don't have revenue. And I think that's generally the case. It's just been a tougher or a higher environment to invest in.
Yeah. You got to have something happening. It's
right.
not like it's just, this is my idea.
Right.
Yeah, it's built, but I don't have any customers.
Right.
Any users. So, what has been your most interesting or surprising investment so far in your career? Of the 44, like you mentioned, something like excuse me, that you like you said, no way in hell this is going to work.
Right.
And then, oh wow.
Right.
Which one has been the surprise for you, or maybe one or two that's been surprising?
Well, the one that I think most people here probably know is I had no idea, is I led the deal on Cheeseburger. So it literally was a cat picture with funny captions blog that we thought was going to be an interesting investment, but never did we think that it could turn into the network that it turned into. A lot of credit goes to the CEO and the management team that's running it. And so again, that kind of proves a point. I think the person has the ability to kind of see where the road is winding. They're capable of making the right pivots. They're capable of making the right calls, and they're able to. I can tell you, there are some very, very sketchy times, even in that history of that company, and being able to have the fortitude to make it through some of these really, really difficult issues. So, that's definitely one. But there's definitely some others. I've done rice fields and some crazy stuff, but that's definitely one that stands out.
Stands out. It's
Yeah.
like, there's no way this is going to work.
Right, right.
At least not to the level it's
That's right.
it's worth.
Yeah.
It may work, but it's not going to do anything like that.
Right, exactly.
What has been your, if you could say, hey, I've done this. What's Andy's biggest achievement to Andy, not to others?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would you say? My biggest achievement is, getting married. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is.
Right.
You're staying married. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is. But what's your biggest achievement?
I would say one of the most inspirational things is I feel very blessed that we're in a country that's capable of having the same kind of capital structure, access to capital, laws, and education, and so forth, that allow for germinate great ideas and have the opportunity to turn into big successes. The stuff that really inspires me is the folks that have no access to capital, no education, and the human spirit to create something out of nothing and actually be very successful at it. And so I would say, one that kind of sticks out inspirationally to me is a bunch of us, I would call geeks, created this technology center down in Central America. And the whole thesis was, hey, there's a lot of nonprofits doing interesting work, but none of them that are really taking advantage of technology. And some of these places where they're making $1 or $2 a day communities, having a hard time making ends meet, have the capability of getting high-speed internet into the community, and have enough of a baseline of education in terms of literacy that you can actually make a pretty large impact as a technologist. And so, a long story short, there we created a program that not only trains the local community, but we also created a program that actually teaches leadership. We learned a ton of hard stuff, so we had to do both. And so before the program would begin, we would interview these folks. And one gal stood out to me because when I was interviewing her, she could never look me in the eye. So very, very shy and didn't even know how to turn on a computer. And by the end of the program, she was delivering a booming PowerPoint presentation about how the community can actually save on costs by cleaning up the garbage in the community. I've never seen anything like it. It was like one of those things where I'm like, man, I am not worthy of like, I had so much to be able to create this kind of value in the States, but nothing compared to the inspiration I got out of this community. So
Yeah.
Those are definitely exciting. Yeah.
And that's still happening, right? That's
It's still going
ongoing.
9 years in. Yeah.
What do you think is the difference between raising money in Seattle versus Silicon Valley?
Huge. Yeah. Is this being recorded or?
It'll be up there tonight.
Right. I would say my honest answer is if you can raise money from the Bay Area, I would do it. Like the reason why I would do it is a couple of reasons. I think the terms are a little bit more friendly. Two is there's just a lot more buzz. If people invest in you, one of the reasons why I like investing is kind of the whole conversation starter. You're hanging out with folks and you're like, oh, did you hear about every move? Did you hear about Chirpify and all that sort of stuff? And it just kind of gets passed around. And I think Seattle's a little insular, but down in the Bay Area, there's just so many groups that if you get a couple of investors there, you've got feet on the street that's talking about your company. They're the ones that can make the introductions to TechCrunch and All Things D and all these publications. And when you go down there, they can set you up and so forth. So I would highly encourage getting investors in the Bay Area. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't take money from Seattle. I think Seattle's great, and in fact, I think deals can come together very, very quickly in Seattle. There's a lot of angel investors, but it is a little bit insular. So if you do take money from Seattle, try to get some from the Bay Area too.
At the same time. What advantages do you think Seattle has over Silicon Valley in just the starting a company, or do you see any advantages?
Yeah, I have several friends that are entrepreneurs in San Francisco, and we have that debate. I would say that the things that I really like is I do think technologists are more loyal here than they are in the Bay Area, and that's probably the number one thing. I would say definitely you can save on costs, you know, it's not as expensive and so forth, but I would say that if you're a great engineer in the Bay Area, you're constantly being bombarded with great ideas, and the best engineers are always following the best companies, and so if you're not growing fast enough, you'll see them fly pretty quickly. And so I think it gives us an advantage. I don't have as much turnover in our engineering ranks, which I would say has helped us tremendously in this market.
Yeah. So it's just being able to keep talent.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And do you think that is? Do you think that's still the? I mean, you think it's changing in like the last year? Is it still? You know, is it still pretty easy to keep good talent?
Yeah, I would say it's easier in Seattle to keep good talent, but I would say it's much harder, even in the last year, to hire great talent. So the best entrepreneurs, the ones that I want to invest in, I want to feel like they know like how to get a great team, you know, and to get a great technology team, because I would say they're getting more expensive. I've heard rumors about what some of these companies are paying as freshly minted grads from some of the top schools, and it scares the hell out of me. So, you know, it's really, really important how well you can sell somebody on your vision and get them on board.
Yeah, totally. And how big is your engineering team?
Our team is 11.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you going to grow that this year?
The plan is to grow, yeah. Yeah.
You're going to have to hire a few guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So anybody out there that knows about us, let me know.
What's a thing that you've done at Buddy TV in the last 3 years that you wish you wouldn't have done?
That I wish I didn't. I wouldn't have done.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we did was we did. Oh, that's a sign. We made some acquisitions, and so and looking back, I spent a fair amount of cash on those acquisitions, and I would say one in particular was very challenging. So not only did it cost me the cash, but it also cost me a lot of legal time and a lot of time to aggravation, and I actually had to unwind it, which was a big waste of time. I would say that would probably be a big mistake, and then also I think I could do a better job on hiring too. If anything I've learned is I'm still not great at it, is there's just no excuse for spending more time upfront hiring, because I feel like when you make a bad hire, it not only are you losing value from that person, but I've also lost value in terms of morale of my team. And so it actually turned some of my rock stars into like average players because these guys were there. So they're actually a virus. And so those are things that I probably would wish that I had done a little bit better.
Yeah. Audience questions? Feel free to.
Thank you very much. It's been very motivational. My question to you is, when you invest in over 48 companies.
46, yeah.
So what is the thing that tickles you to say, oh, I like this company? I mean, I don't believe it's the PowerPoint presentation or the numbers, cash flow, and all that. I mean,
Yep.
You hear different formulas, like
Yep.
you gotta have this many followers, you gotta have this much revenue, and this and that. But sometimes, I mean, Instagram, it's 1 billion. I mean, that's not a good model for all stars.
That's right.
That's not
right.
real.
Yeah.
Really. So for you and then your friends,
Mm-hmm.
what are the things that you guys look into when you invest?
Yeah.
Practically.
So a couple of things. One is I don't invest full time, and so I would say if I had to think about why I invest or why some of my friends invest too, I would say it's much more of an emotional decision, and so less so on you can have a great PowerPoint, and those are things that are kind of bare minimum and so forth. It has to be a good idea, good team, and so forth. But kind of the emotional state, like, hey, am I resonating with the idea? Is this something that I get excited about? Would I tell my friends about it because it is so cool that that I have to be a part of it? I would say that's a great pull. I have to believe in you. Like, I feel like you really want to take care of the investor. You've got a lot of skin in the game. It's clear that you've walked through walls and make things happen. Like, getting a deal done with a large company, like I've done these deals before where the entrepreneur was able to sell a large company and get a deal done even without a great product. It shows a lot of fortitude. So those are things that I like. For sure, if it comes in warm to me from somebody that says I'm already writing a check, that helps a ton in terms of whether or not I end up writing a check too.
Questions? Yeah, go ahead.
The time went very fast, so thank you.
Good.
You talked a little bit about the venture capital in Silicon Valley versus Seattle. What are your views on the Northeast, New York, Boston?
Yeah.
Dealing with that?
So I raised angel money from New York in my first venture, and I would say my experience with them was good. I enjoyed working with them. I would say right now New York's really picking up. There's a lot of activity going on, and so there's a lot of noise. So I think it's actually harder to raise money there than it was maybe a couple of years ago. But what I did notice too is they are tightly knit networks. So if you do get one person to buy in, a lot of times their network will bring in 3 or 4 times that money, and that's happened on a few of my deals too. So that is a nice kind of network effect of the East Coast. In terms of value and so forth to the company, I found that to be easy to work with, but I haven't personally worked with someone that's added a ton of business operations to my companies.
It's on a motion sensor.
Yeah.
Good.
Do you think there is such a thing as too many or too little investors?
I do. So with a lot of investors, I have 9 right now, and that's not bad. What happens is when you need to coalesce a group to sign off on documents and so forth, I have found that once you're past a dozen, it is really herding cats. And so and that's in a literal sense too. When I did the cheeseburger deal, I brought in 22 investors. And it was, if somebody's in Korea or Russia or something, when something needs to get done and everything's just a little slower. So I generally don't like to have too many tiny investors. So the ones that I try to avoid unless they add a lot of value is I try not to bring in these 10, 15, 20, 25K check writers, because you have to do the same amount of work to kind of keep them up to date. But if they're high value, then I would absolutely bring them in.
I'm just curious, you said you're a part-time investor. How much time a week or a month do you spend nurturing your investors, or your investments?
Yeah, I'm on 3 boards, and and how I'm involved with them is about a board meeting every other month. So I'm looking at probably 3 or 4 hours in terms of board meetings a month. And then I try to meet with 1 entrepreneur a week, so that's about an hour on top of that. And then a lot of emails will flow in, and so I just try to look through all those and see what's interesting and set up a meeting for sometime in the future. So not too much time. I try to kind of focus on Buddy TV, but occasionally something excites me and I'll dive a little bit deeper.
What part of being an entrepreneur do you enjoy the most?
Yeah, I would say probably 2 things. I really like building things, and so the notion of being able to build something from nothing is really, really appealing, because it's just super fun, and I like the whole notion of what the process looks like and how do we innovate and so forth and build a team. The other part that I do like is because you're taking the risk, you also get to see very closely what decisions lead to what outcomes. And one of the reasons why I like poker too is like you make a decision, even though the outcome may not be the right one, at least you can figure out, hey, where did I go wrong and so forth. If I'm working in a big company, that's probably the biggest frustration for me is I'm not affecting EPS. I'm not operating at a place where my decisions are making a direct impact, whether or not it's good or bad. And I enjoy that whole roller coaster ride of making great and terrible decisions too.
Two quick questions. One, you're on the board of 3 companies. Are you also investors in those companies?
I am. Yep. Yep.
And then the second question is, would you recommend bringing someone onto the board if they are not an investor?
Yes. So I do have one board member. Actually, take it back. I have 2 board members on my current board. One is Mike Galligan, and the second is Rick Thompson. And both of them are non-investors in Buddy TV. And I found them actually later in the process, so after I had gone through the process of raising money. And so what I wanted to do is build the best board that I can that would help me focus strategically for the company. And so, and I actually have 2. So I have a board that overlooks fiduciary responsibilities and strategic issues, and then I also have an advisory board. And the way that I distinguish between the two is the advisory board is very, very selective in terms of what people bring to the table in terms of expertise. And so I have somebody that's great at SEO. Rand Fishkin is on there. Neil Patel is on there. He's great at social media. I've got Jeremy Shoemaker, who's on affiliate marketing. I've got a group of 11 people, all of which have different skill sets, and I have them on my advisory board where I can always have a sounding board for very, very tactical things, and then I use my board for very strategic issues. Here's a huge biz dev deal that I'm considering about doing, M&A or where are we taking the company, financing and all that. That's what I do at the board.
What size of, I guess, incentive did you have to give both the people that are on your advisory board and the people on your board of directors?
Yeah. It's a good question. I think a couple of things. One is kind of where the stage of the company is. Generally speaking, I don't like seeing companies, even the ones that I invest in, where I see more than like 75 basis points, maybe 1%. So, I mean, that's really on the high end. So advisory board members, maybe, again, depending on the caliber of the person and how much work they're doing, 25 to 50 basis points. The key thing that I would say there is a lot of people, again, are lazy. So they lock them in and they don't use their advisory board. And so on my advisory board agreement, there's a vesting schedule, and there's also a very, very descriptive responsibility. So I have one annual meeting with all the advisors, and then I always make sure that written into the contract there's at least a couple hours a month. Whether or not I use it is another thing, but I make sure that there's a accountability associated with that equity.
I really love Buddy TV, and I really thank you for enhancing the content. It just makes it so much more fun and to save time. But I have something that I want you to do next. Since the FCC is rolling out audible descriptions for all the content that's coming out, and this is something that helps people that can't see the content, so in between people talking, it describes what's going on, describes the action. I'd really like to have you incorporate that in Buddy TV, because then I can listen to television in my car.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's something that we've actually thought about too. So there's actually some real interesting ideas around that. So yeah, thank you.
Good.
Most of the advice for raising money seems to be very software product centric. Do you have any particular advice for hardware products?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think I would change my advice in terms of the process of going after investors. And so it really is, who's my target list? Who are the folks that I need to build relationships with? And it's not necessarily directly with the person that you're talking to. It is the people around those folks. But I would definitely make it a sales process to go after them. In terms of selling hardware, that's it's one of the more scary areas for me. So me personally, I do stay away from them, but I do know a lot of folks who are very interested in investing in hardware, and if they were to say that this is really, really good, I would look at it. So, but I would definitely if I was raising money for hardware, I would absolutely look for a lead investor that has done a hardware product in the past. Number one, find that person, lock him in, and have him share with his network that this is a great deal. So, but I wouldn't necessarily change the process.
Hi, Laurie Rivera, Loomis World Corporation. So we are an e-commerce business. Is it best to contract out work for advisors and boards, or should we actually hire on people full time?
I think a couple of things. One is if it's core to your business, whatever you're trying to do, like this is something that if you were to sell the company, people would say, wow, you've got a really unique way of doing this, whether it be customer acquisition or SEO or what have you, then I think you need to have both. You need to have somebody that's working on it internally, that's an asset to your company, and then having somebody on the advisory board, because it's so core to what you're doing, that they can also provide kind of outside perspective and bring some value to the table. I would absolutely have both if it's core. If it's not core, I would hire a contractor. I would hire somebody else to kind of manage that piece. So, for example, if it's logistics that's not that interesting, then I would not bring on an advisor or an employee to do that.
Good. Yeah. So I think you're in a very unique position. You invest, and then you also have investors. The business that you run. So what's your thought process when you look for investors? But at the same time, you get approached in a similar fashion that you approach investors. Like what do you advise for entrepreneurs while they are thinking through this process?
Thinking through approaching investors?
Approaching investors, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think the whole raising money piece of it is a full-time job, and so I would focus on, like I mentioned before, and Mike also pointed out, is who's your target that you're going after, and the most annoying thing to an investor is you're pitching them something that they would never invest in. It's both a waste of your time and also a waste of the investor's time. And so I would look at maybe companies that you actually aspire to and see who invested in those. It may not be a direct competitor. Direct competitors are a little tougher, but you know, if you're in the e-commerce business, like, hey, if you really like Gilt and it's not really your competitive set, then who are the investors that invested in that, and start building that target list, and then start looking at your network and find out how do you get a warm intro into those, because I can tell you cold calls and cold emails are much, much tougher in the investment world than it is to do biz dev.
Questions, guys?
If you found a project that you really liked and you said you'd like to get in early, would you consider being a CEO, or are you too time constrained right now to do that?
Oh, the 100% answer is no. I would not consider being a CEO.
Okay.
Yeah.
Follow-up question. Let me give you a hypothetical. You find a program you really like. You're going to set up a team to make the program go. They need $300K. You come up with the money. How do you get paid?
Oh, okay. So you raised 300K.
You raised 300K.
I raised 300K for a project.
Yep.
And I'm not the CEO, or
you're going to find CEO.
Oh, I'm going to find the CEO. Well, the way that I would get paid in that scenario, and I've actually done that before, is equity. So I would have a piece of the company, and then I'd sell off 300K in equity. But I would have a good ownership stake in the company.
But when would you sell that off?
There's a variety of opportunities. The key thing is to make sure the company takes off. So once it takes off, here's one of the things that I think a lot of entrepreneurs, including myself, sometimes miss, is it's a lot easier to start a company than it is to exit, and the exit is not necessarily an M&A transaction. The exit is really where you have lots of options. It's where you've created a sustainable company. You're not having to work. And so when that happens, you have the ability to sell the company. You can sell a piece of your company where you can take some off the table. You can acquire other companies, a lot of options. So the key is, number one, is if I raise that 300K, is to make sure it takes off. And then the options where someone might say, hey, I'm willing to put in $5 million into the company, and I'm willing to allow you to sell $1 million of your equity. So you can take $1 million off the table, and you're off to the races with $4 million to run the company even further.
If you were the first one in and you put 300K and you can take it to a higher level where it's ready to be sold, what percentage of the pie do you expect to get?
Well, if I wrote the check for 300K?
Yep.
Well, here's the way that I would think about it. I think there's the enterprise value of the pie. What do I think the 300K that I bring in, as opposed to perhaps a partner or who else is in the company? And so there's so many nuances here, so I'm just going to assume some assumptions. So if it's an engineer that is expecting a paycheck and they're not actually going to be writing a check, they're going to get a smaller portion of the company. Maybe I would give them, if they're getting a full market salary, maybe 2 to 3%, something like that. And then you've got enough to kind of give to some other folks. Once you get to Series A, that starts dropping. So it starts becoming 1%, then 0.5%, 0.25, and so forth. But I would make sure that I'm generous enough to be able to get the talent that I need to get in. So if I put in $300,000, I own 100%, it's 100% of zero, really. It's not worth anything. So how do I bring in people that add value to the company and incentivize them properly? And so if it requires bringing on folks at 10% because you haven't done it before, sometimes that's the price to pay. So.
Have you ever invested in, or do you know anyone who has invested in a company but not gotten a portion of it, just given the money to help the business out?
You mean a loan?
A grant, a donation. I have seen tip jars before. But honestly, I actually have not seen somebody write one without saying, hey, this is a loan or something to be paid back. Nonprofits, I've done it. I've invested in Vitana and so forth, but no, I'm not sure of too many things outside of a tip jar.
Yeah, outside of a nonprofit, I can't think of one. You go ahead, Steve.
So what do you need next? If you could wave a magic wand, what would you like next for your business?
So extremely focused right now. So very, very focused on how do we get step function in terms of customer acquisition. So we have a very, very good audience on our website that's generating cash and profitable. But I'll say on the mobile and tablet side, we're still early. Great reviews and so forth, but a lot of the question is traction on that side. And then on the other end is how do I generate even more revenue from what we have? And so I would say that both of those are critical to our success in 2013 and beyond. Because I feel like we've got the right assets, the right team, the right technology. A lot of things are in place. And so, what's the one thing that'll move the business in the right direction? It really is customer acquisition.
Questions, guys?
Have you developed any companies without actually using investors?
Without using investors, yeah. When I started Buddy TV, I basically was writing my own checks
you were the investor.
Yeah, was my own investor. I have seen organic deals done, which means that they were quote unquote profitable on day one. Maybe they did some consulting and so forth to kind of generate some revenue to get going. But I really like that. I like scrappy bootstrap things. So like the guys at Bacon Salt were another thing. They showed a lot of progress without raising any money, and I think that's the bar now too. Before you raise money too, is you've got to build things organically. A lot of times it's 4 people who are pulling no paychecks and they're all meeting late at night and eating pizzas and cranking away and having fun at the same time, but they aren't getting paid.
So one question that was sent to me is about valuation. So do you think valuations as they are today, first of all, in Seattle, are they where you think they should be? Do you think they're high, they're low? What do you think?
I'll say it's very clear that the valuations in Seattle are more depressed than the ones in San Francisco. So, if you have the ability to raise money in San Francisco, you get better valuations down there than you do in Seattle. But again, that's one of the things that
Do you think they're fair, though? That's what I'm saying. So you think that do you think they're depressed here? I think everyone in the room believes that as well. But do you think that it's at the right spot? Do you think it's inflated in the valley? Do you think it's inflated there, or?
I'll actually take the conversation a little bit higher too. So this is the way I would look at it. So I get emails from folks saying, "Hey, I've been out there trying to fundraise for a long time, and I'm trying to get a 1.5 million pre, and so forth." And I will tell you, like, if the market keeps telling you like we're not willing to invest at that, it's like you owning Microsoft stock and the market says it's worth $27 a share and you're like, please give me $35 for this stock. Nobody's gonna do that. So why are you like pushing yourself against a rock? And so I would think outside the box a little bit and say, hey, instead of raising 1.5, why not raise it at 800, raise a little bit less, get a few more milestones, and then raise at a higher valuation, and your net valuation is the same as 1.5. And so there are ways to get the deal done, and if you're spending 6 months and you still have financing, a few things could be wrong. Number one, nobody's going to invest in your company, which is unfortunate a lot of times is the case. Most companies don't get funded. But number two, you're just way setting your expectations too high. And so I would err on the side of, if I'm raising money, raise it as quickly as I can, because the deal gets stale too. If I've seen the deal 3 months ago and you're pitching me again, and I've already got some negative connotation with it, like, hey, how come you weren't funded 3 months ago? And so it's the same thing as houses that sit out on the market. So raise it as fast as you can. If someone's interested and they're hemming and hawing on valuation, err on the side of just getting the deal done, and believe in yourself that you can create a big enough pie that you can make it past that valuation jump the next time you go out for money.
Well, guys, thank you very much. Thanks for your promptness, your attendance, and the great questions. I always appreciate that. You're welcome to hang out here for another half hour, 40 minutes. We got to be out here by 9:15. So, like I said, more welcome to hang out and chat and network some more. But again, thank you very much. Thanks very much to the sponsors, Graham & Dunn, Seed IP, Engage Marketing. We love you guys. Thanks for all your help and support. Thank you. One thing I forgot was, well, two things I forgot. Most importantly, I forgot to thank Andy Liu. Next month is February 25th at the same spot, same time, same bat channel. But we have a special guest. We have Derek Anderson, who actually started Startup Grind. He's going to be here. And Mark Nager from Startup Weekend is going to be the guest.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a great time next month, whatever day that is, Friday, or it's Monday, February 25th. So put that on your calendars. Look forward to seeing you. And again, thank you all for coming.